Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all are having a great day so far. So today we are going to be replacing the battery on a TPMS sensor on a 2010 Honda Accord, and ideally I will not need to use a replacement like this since these TPMS sensors have a CR2032 battery, which can be replaced with some difficulty. So let's go over to the car and see how we could first diagnose this issue. So here we are inside the 2010 Honda Accord. When we go ahead and start the car, we can go ahead and see that the TPMS light is still on. And when we take a look at the live data for the TPMS sensors, we can also read the pressure sensor signal status for each of these tires as well. We can see that tire 4 pressure sensor battery status is low and is showing an alert status on this vehicle. The tire configuration is driver left, number 1, passenger, number 2, a rear passenger, number 3, and a rear driver, number 4. So tire 4 will correspond to the rear driver. At this point, now that we have identified the tire with the faulty TPMS sensor, we can first start off by releasing the air from the tire. So remove the cap from the valve stem and loosen the valve stem here. Allowing gravity to release the air from the tire and making sure that we replace the Schrader valve leader. Now that all the air has been released, we will go ahead and loosen those lug nuts, jack up, and then remove the lug nuts to remove the tire. After removing the tire, you could go ahead and pop the cap out and then break the bead using whichever method you prefer. I'm going to be using this tire changing tool I got from Harbor Freight. And after you break the bead, you can use a deep socket to remove the valve stem and TPMS sensor. This valve stem uses an 11mm socket. Now that we got the valve stem out, we could go ahead and clean up these components and take a look at that battery inside the TPMS sensor. So now that we're back at the desk, we can go ahead and clean up these components. But first, I'm going to take a look at the inside of this TPMS sensor and check that battery. The battery looks to be covered in some sort of epoxy or some kind of rubberized texture. We can go ahead and poke a hole into that and gently remove it. You do want to be very careful when using any kind of metal tools on this, because if you puncture the battery, then bad things can happen, even if it has a low charge. Going to use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to expedite the process, just a little bit. Now that the battery contacts are exposed, I can see this is a 2450. However, a 2032 battery should work just fine. So after removing the battery terminals and isolating the leads, I can now go ahead and add the CR2032 battery into the circuit. Checking the new battery, it looks to be just fine. And on this board, it looks like the positive lead is on the left and the negative lead is on the right. On this battery, positive is on the top, negative is on the bottom. There are some videos that I have seen recommending to solder directly to the battery with these terminals. I would highly recommend against doing that since you're introducing heat to the battery and it could cause problems in the future. On the market today, there are these spot welders that are available for pretty cheap. You could find them on AliExpress and elsewhere, and sometimes they even come with nickel-plated tabs as well, so they could spot weld directly to batteries if you need to. Now I'm going to spot this tab to the negative terminal of the battery. And now we can see we have a good weld, and that is not going anywhere. We can now add a little bit of flux and solder this lead directly to the negative terminal. There we go. And then we can carefully uncover this lead and spot weld the positive terminal to the positive side of the battery. Now that those spot welds are in place, let's go ahead and read the voltages, and we can see we have 3.2 volts. Ultimately, whether or not you want to replace the epoxy that was previously inside is up to you. In this case, I did replace it, and I also sealed a couple of the upcoming edges here with super glue. However, now that the back is fully sealed and is in good condition, we can go ahead and clean these metal pieces with alcohol. However, for this rubber grommet, I would recommend to use water instead. If you use alcohol, then there's a possibility that it could break over time. Alcohol will remove the elasticity from this rubber. Now that everything is reassembled, we can go ahead back to the car and put it into the tire. Once you install the TPMS sensor back into the wheel, be sure to pull it through so that the rubber grommet that is surrounding the bottom of the valve stem comes through the top opening of where it will be mounted, and make sure it has a good seal. Once you have completed that, you can go ahead and install your new Schrader valve. Then from here, you want to drive around the bead and then fill the tire back up again. After the tire is fully inflated, we can put the cap back in, mount the tire back on the vehicle, lower the vehicle, tighten all the lug nuts, and then refill the tire as necessary. With all that complete, we could put the valve cap back on, and we are now back inside the vehicle. We can go ahead and turn it on. And after reading our codes, we can see the TPMS system has no fault. In our TPMS diagnosis, we read codes, and we find the system passes with no fault, and the tire 4 pressure sensor signal status is now reading normal. And there you have it. Generally, it's recommended to drive the vehicle between 30 minutes to an hour to allow that TPMS sensor to reset and start showing the correct live data. At the moment, it still reads the same tire pressure, for example, so it will need to be driven for a little while before it starts reporting that data properly to the ECU. Something else to keep in mind, for most people, it's probably easier just to replace the TPMS sensor itself. However, if you have the correct equipment and you're stubborn like me, then you'll find a way to get it done. But in any case, thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. If it has helped you in any way, feel free to subscribe as well. But in any case, once again, thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Take care.